I am really humbled by what people um, have to experience and what they carry and the deep connections and love and lessons and the things that bring people to their knees. I'm really humbled by it always.
Hi, and welcome to the Feel Good Always podcast, where we transform grief and suffering into never ending connection and a life fully felt. I'm Becky Bradley, and in today's episode, I'm joined by my dear friend, Catherine Mulligan. She's spent her life weaving together corporate leadership and spiritual wisdom. Catherine shares powerful stories of signs and divine guidance and what Spirit wants us to know about living awake in both the challenges and the joys of life. We also talk about how to show up for someone who is grieving. If you're here listening, I don't believe it's by accident. I know you will hear something today that you are meant to hear, something to remind you that we are all guided, supported, and always invited to feel good always. So let's begin. Welcome to Feel Good Always, real stories of love, connection, and remembering who we are. I'm Becky Bradley, and I'm here with Catherine Mulligan. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Becky.
I'm glad you're here. Catherine is a longtime friend of mine. We met years ago at a women's retreat. We didn't know each other, but you're one of those people that I meet and feel like I've known for my entire lifetime.
I fell in love with you immediately and forevermore.
Yes, I remember talking to you for hours and hours and hours and just staring at that beautiful red hair and just thinking you were just so magical and seemed to have it all figured out.
Oh my gosh. I don't know about that, but
Yeah, looking back, yeah, we just had so we've been together, we've been, friends. We actually have only met that one time in person, but we've stayed connected over the last 12 years, which is, pretty amazing to me.
yeah, it was only that one time in person. That doesn't feel real, but it's a heart connection.
Yeah, it's a total heart connection. And we're very, very connected. That's why I have you here, connected to me, connected to Kira, connected to everything. So I'm going to read a little bio about you, and then we're going to get started. So, Catherine Mulligan lives in the real world, having built a high level career as a global executive over 25 years in New York City financial services. She combines the pragmatism of a business person with the soul and calling of a healer. Catherine believes that we each have a divine light that shines and connects us all to the light there is. She has let the light of spirit guide her in service as a leader of large, multi-layered teams, as a consultant to C-level clients, and as a technical expert in the public sector, including as an expert witness for the United States Senate. She is grounded in the knowledge that God is my employer. A gifted, intuitive, Catherine Soul Light is designed to shine in the darkest places. She brings the gift of her own healing journey through trauma to provide compassion, connection, and peace to fellow travelers. With courage and humanity, Catherine holds heart space for awakening, healing, and transformation. She has worked with clients through chemotherapy and other intense treatments through major life changes and grief, including terminal illness. Catherine is a certified Reiki master in the Usai lineage. She earned a 100-hour certificate in holistic psychology from the New York Open Center. Catherine is also an ordained minister in Universal Life Church and can legally perform marriages and other ceremonies. She holds a BA in English and Women's Studies from the College of the Holy Cross in Worcestershire, Massachusetts. Oh, so much good stuff.
When you say it that way,
Yeah, it's interesting to read the bios of my close friends like you and go, well, I mean, I know you're amazing. You're so much more than the bio, right? But you're like this mix of really corporate and then to watch your spiritual journey at the same time, kind of like side by side.
yeah, it's so amazing. I mean, somebody actually just asked me today, how do you go from sort of this corporate, if when the lever's over here, and then how does it swing over to spirit? But now I would just say, it's all spirit. And maybe it helps to sort of clarify on that bio that that's from my website, Druid Rising. So that's my little side gig, doing intuitive work with people, but it's all spirit. So
Yeah, which leads me to this. This is so interesting because it's not on your corporate bio, right? Of course. it's on your Druid rising, which is where you do this spiritual work. And I exactly what you're saying. It's actually done 100% in everything that we do. It's just that the collective is not completely ready for it to be in the corporate bio, right?
Yeah, but you'd be surprised how it does weave its way into my corporate life. I mean, it is funny. I had a guy one time, I had worked with him. I didn't know him all that well, really, and he left the company, and a few years later, he called me. I thought he was just calling for career advice. That wouldn't be unusual, and he started telling me how his life was falling apart. And he said, all these things are happening, and all I keep thinking and hearing in my mind is call Catherine Mulligan, and I don't know why. And I said, "Oh, well, I know why." And I told him about my spirit work, and the guy was from Long Island, so he had this really thick accent, and he said, "I always knew there was something off about you." So, it it shows up. It shows up.
Absolutely. And I had that exact experience with you, which I'll talk about in a minute. That this is actually happening a lot with a lot more people, this connection, and that we kind of we'll talk about this too, this whole woo woo thing, that people are connected, but it's not something that people are putting in corporate bios yet. It doesn't mean that you fully had this always. And yeah, people start hearing, call Catherine Mulligan energetically, and so how that happened with me is, I always say, you were one of the first people that I was connected to. And it makes sense because, and of course, you're like, well, yeah, of course. So, when you think of someone and they call you or they text you, or, that happens to people a lot. And people are like, wow, sometimes you might think it's a synchronicity. Well, with you, it happened I hadn't talked to you in 6 months. And I was actually looking through our text string for something you had sent me. And in that moment, you text me. And I think this was a little breadcrumb that I was being given to show me ahead of time, because I was like, I couldn't explain it away. I was like, there's no way she just at this exact moment. And that was like a little opening for me. And it makes total sense to me now, because I do that for people all the time, you know. All the time. People will be like, I was just thinking about you. And I'm like, of course you were. I heard. It's not that I hear something, it's just that I will message somebody and they will have just been thinking all the time. So it's not surprising that you had that connection. So, this podcast is about feeling good always. It's because, for those that are listening that don't know, my daughter Kira was in a fatal UTV accident in December of 2023, which of course was, absolutely worst possible thing that could have happened to me. You, Catherine, were somebody I was looking back through our texts recently and, thinking about this podcast, and it's hard to look at, to see how deep of pain I was in. Of course, just really like not wanting to live and really confused. I was really confused because I was getting a lot of connection and signs. So I'm telling you about these signs, they're nonstop. And I'm also really not wanting to live through it. So this podcast, all these people came into my life, and Kira started showing all of these signs. And really, I've just been encouraged to share these, because I believe as we share it, the energy grows and it spreads. And it really, whether you have somebody that you've lost, somebody that's transitioned, or you're in grief, or you're just having a hard time, or you're feeling great, I think we're moving into this higher level of consciousness, and that's what this work is here today. But I want to talk about your connection to Kira, immediately. And even, all of that happened right there in the beginning. I know for you, it was like, well, of course. And I loved reading through the text, because you just kept encouraging me and meeting me where I was at and reassuring me everything that I was feeling and seeing was true.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'm so grateful for Kira bringing us Feel Good Always and all of the great transmissions that she's bringing forward. I would be remiss if I didn't mention your whole family, actually, because when I walked away from meeting you back in 2013, one of the overwhelming impressions that you made. And if I had to describe Becky Bradley, I would have said Becky and Mike have this whole pile of kids, and they're all like wriggling puppies who are just like in love with each other and are like piled on top of each other and wriggling around, and so intentional about your connection and your love. Um, and really your devotion to each other, and that was all of you. So that was like the Bradley Cunningham family heart connection was like all there. Um, and then so Kira crossed over on my birthday. I don't know if I told you that. When I first heard about Kira's accident, I did see a rainbow in the sky in New Hampshire in December. So that was a couple of days later.
The rainbow that you saw, yeah, I looked through the text that you had seen the one that I posted on social media, which is shocking that I even posted, but all part of this. And that is almost like you seeing the frequency of the rainbow I posted, you saw one right afterwards.
Right afterwards. Yeah.
I always think about the work I'm being asked to do here in the world, which is big and hard. It's hard. There's a lot of painful stuff that I live through, that my family lives through, and that I get this continuous connection from Kira that's like, keep going, just so many signs and connection. And it's like, sometimes I'm like, wow, we got left here, or I got left here to, not that I feel sorry for myself, I see what it is, but got left here to do this work, and I will do it. You want to get me to do something? Yeah, this would probably be the best way to get me to do it, which, it all makes more sense when I think about it like that. But that, a lot of times with people transitioning, it's really the people that are left here with the human feelings. And yeah, we have to feel it all, every single aspect of it, and that we will live through the pain and all of that to open us up to connect. And so you, like, talking about being open to connecting. I know that you've been connected like this. I don't think I really understood it at the level until I really start. It's like we can know something, but it's until we fully experience it. Like, I understand your level of connection on such a deep level now because I am connected in this way. So I know you had Alpana, which is one of your friends. And so I remember when I first met you, your friend had transitioned a couple years, and you would talk about all the signs. And actually yesterday was the Alpana Day, that you call it Alpana Day. So tell me about her, because I know she's here. I know because we scheduled this call, and I scheduled it without realizing that yesterday was Alpana Day. And I was like, of course, because she's working with me without me even knowing it.
Yeah. And she doesn't love sort of coming through these days. She's sort of like, I'm a bit busy. Uh, I mean, it actually goes back before that. So really my first experience that I can really remember is when I was about maybe 6 years old, and my guardian angel saved me from drowning. And I knew it was my guardian angel um, immediately in the moment, but it's not exactly something that you sort of share with people. And so over the years, I would have experiences, and you know, just to say that I've been through a lot of really challenging, dark stuff. And, in some very damaging situations. And I fed myself to the lions. And the more I tried to figure it out, the worse it got. And I was getting very specific, clear guidance. So, for example, notably, the Archangel Michael instructed me to leave an abusive marriage like 10 o'clock at night, like leave right now.
How did you know that it was Archangel Michael?
You tell me. I mean,
You just knew.
yeah, I mean, and the way I describe it to people is like, if you were sort of lying, taking a nap, and your spouse walked in the room, you would know the energy of your spouse. Or if your best friend called you on the phone and said, I can't wait to tell you this story. Without seeing the number, you wouldn't have to ask, who is this? You would know. So that's the only way I can describe it. So like you tell me, I don't know, it was a voice. It said leave now and I did. So things like that were kind of happening, and I'll just say my team and spirit navigated me through some very stormy seas, and brought Alpina back into my life. She was a friend of mine from high school, and she had a terminal diagnosis, and we talked a lot about spirit and things like that. So when she transitioned, I actually knew when it happened because I mean she was in hospice and we knew kind of the end was coming. I lived in Manhattan and I was walking around downtown and I saw a little brown girl with like chemo hair, like short chemo hair, wearing a little purple dress, holding hands with between two men. And I was right behind them and she was walking and I said, "Well, she's gone." And she and I had said in spirit before she transitioned, "Let's make a pact of like how you're going to show up to me. You're going to have to do it in birds." She always had pet birds and stuff like that. So, I'm sitting in my 30th floor office building and these birds started doing, these weird things that I had never seen before. And then she just kind of kept showing up. Like one of my favorite stories is I was running in Central Park and I was thinking about her. And I'm like, okay, so, you know, would be great to hear from you. And I looked down and there were all these little brown birds sort of scrabbling around. And right in the middle was a parakeet, like in the middle of Central Park in New York City. And I was like, okay. She shared something that I think is very helpful for those of us who are left here to know. She said, dying was the easy part. She said that was very easy. She said it was everything that happened here on earth that was really hard. And she said, so now we had this little thing that we called each other spirit partner. And so she kind of made a little joke and said, you're still going to be my spirit partner, but now I'm actually a spirit. And she said, you're going to have to get used to talking to me like not via phone and text, but in other ways. And so, yeah, that was happening. She crossed over in 2010. So that happened. So you and I met in 2013. And so I had been Druid Rising to people who knew the woo part of me for many years, but you had to kind of know. And I sort of had like my spiritual friends, so to speak.
Mhm.
But it wasn't terribly integrated. I was this hard charging business lady, in New York City and blah, blah, blah. So you mentioned Toby, and his anniversary is tomorrow. So Toby was, I mean, I'll call him a friend, but he was really more of an acquaintance. He worked for a competitor. We were all sort of knew each other in the space, and he got a diagnosis. And I said, well, listen, I perform this ancient Japanese healing art called Reiki, which even at the time was like kind of in the mainstream. It was a little woo, but like people kind of know what Reiki is. And I said, I'm happy to offer that in service. It can really help with the anxiety and pain during treatment. And he wasn't interested at the time. But then about a year later, I was somewhere and the guides said to me, text Toby. And I did. And I said, how's it going? And he said, oh, funny you should text,
Mhm.
but the cancer's back and I have to start treatment again today. And I said, well, okay, my offer still stands. And he said, okay, I'm in. So I can be a slow study in my own life, but I thought I was just going to be able to send him the Reiki and I'd give him a straight energy report and that would be it. Well, I get all of this content, of course, that comes through for him. And I said to the guides, I was doing it long distance, I should say that. I was actually in a hotel room in Los Angeles. I remember.
What does that mean though? How like cuz you can't for people that are listening, that you can do it long distance. You don't have to be sitting next to somebody. I mean, I know this, but
Yeah, no, I mean, well, spirit knows no bounds, right? So I don't need to be with somebody to do a healing, to do a reading. I do all of my readings, almost all of them on Zoom. Um, I do clearings for people's homes and spaces, remotely. So, I'm in this hotel room and I send them the Reiki. I get all this content and I say to the guides, Please don't make me tell this guy that I talk to the angels and they talk back. He is my work friend. And they said, this man is dying and it's all about you.
Yeah.
So when you put it that way,
Yeah. I can feel the energy of all of that right now, just like how powerful that message was for you.
yeah. And I said, well, okay, but then you have to have my back. You have to make sure that I'm protected. And they were like, okay, Catherine, like, yes, we've got you. So, I remember texting him like, "Well, first I have to tell you something." And I flung the phone across the room and went, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I just told this guy." And I saw the dot 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 come across the screen like he's texting me back and he said, "Okay, I'm in." So we worked together for several months all the way up until 6 days before he died. I was in the room for our last session together with a mutual friend who was with us, and that guy was also a friend from work, and he really didn't want to be there. It was Toby's insistence that he was there, and the guy he didn't want to talk about it in advance. I had tried to connect with him to say, "Look, can I just explain what's going on here?" And Toby wouldn't let him wriggle out. I mean, Toby was about to die. If you've ever been close to a human body that is getting ready, you can tell. And so it was no secret what was going on. And, all I can say is that like personality Catherine fell away and real Catherine sort of surged up with great authority, is the only way I can put it, and just said, "You've been chosen to be a part of his transition team. Like, this is literally the most important part of his life, and you're called to service right now, and you're going to do it. And this is a great sacred honor and blessing. Um, and here's what you're going to do. And I'm in charge, so you don't have to worry about it. And the three of us had this incredible experience. I know because we all talked about it. I know Toby's experience throughout was really dramatic. The reason I mention all of that is because it was really Toby being in from my work world that got me sort of like fully integrated. So, God is my employer. That person who asked me today, like, how do you turn the lever from here to here? I don't. Somebody once said to me, like, well, why don't you make a pie chart of your life? And you can do like how much is work and how much is family and how much is spirituality and how much. And I was like, the whole pie is spirituality
Yeah. Because it's who you are. It's actually who everyone is.
for sure.
Yeah. It's just that we think it's separate. And I feel like we also, especially in Western culture, feel like it's woo woo and it's not, we don't talk about it as I obviously am talking about it on full blast now, but to anyone and everyone, you talk to me at the grocery store, I might not say every single thing, but the connection, because it's everything there. You don't, it's not separate, which totally seems so basic, right? But we can think it's separate.
We can think it, and I didn't have a lot of great reference points for trusting God or the world. I had really experienced a lot of stuff. I generally try not to say things are bad or good, but I had experienced some things that were very, very dark and then had acted out in turn. So I had experienced damage, I had caused damage, and the more that this happened, I really didn't have a lot of reference points for trusting God or other people. I was really highly defended. I'm grateful for, I guess my ego sort of fighting its way through here because I really try to meet people where they are with whatever is going on in their lives. And I feel like I'm as much of a student of all of this as anybody. Great,
You're such a great model of it if I think about even just looking, I mean, obviously we have our friendship and all of that, but looking through our texts, you saying, like, I mean, we've been friends a long time, connected. It could be months or it could be we're talking a lot. To say, I remember during COVID connecting a lot, like in hard times. And you just saying, like, I'm here, I stand by you in friendship. I stand by you in heartbreak. I stand by you. I mean, that's what you said. And that's like actually one of the most spiritual things you could say. You weren't going to fix me and you knew it. You also, I think, with enough experience through absolute darkness,
Yeah.
which I completely relate to what you're saying. I've also experienced a lot of dark things in my life, and you could look back and see why it happened. At least I could. I usually could see, okay, this happened because it drove me to do this and that. And I would always know anything, I'd be able to see it. But with Kira's transition, I was like, not this. Like, I couldn't imagine finding a way to see. I mean, I knew I had been practicing for years this idea of, and I learned through spiritual practices, and I wrote about it. I literally would write, "Help me trust you, God." A God that I actually wasn't really sure was real.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I don't really know if I fully 100% believed in a really true. It's so crazy because I've had so many things happen that I didn't like 100% believed in a power greater than myself until after Kira's transition when she straight up told me she was with God. And I actually have that moment on video. But the thing is I had been practicing for at least 12 years, believing even when I didn't, and asking to trust, practicing anyways.
Yeah. People want to sort of be at the top of the mountain right away. And that's not really, we get to climb up the mountain together. And I want to go back to what you said about just meeting you where you were. I mean, look, many years ago, a friend of mine had a baby boy called Henry, and he had a heart defect. And they did a bunch of surgeries, but ultimately, they couldn't fix that. And so he transitioned when he was 5 months old. I don't have kids, first of all. So I don't know what having a baby is like. I don't know what losing a baby is like. I don't, and so I just said to my friend, look, I'm just going to keep in touch with you. And obviously the overtures of condolences, and all of that, and I don't really know what to say, so I'm not going to try. I'm just going to keep in touch with you, so just know that when I'm reaching out, you don't have to reach back, you don't have to respond, but I just want you to know that I'm standing with you in this. And she told me sometime later, maybe a year and a half later, she said, "You're one of the only people who still talks to me." Because I
Mhm.
think this culture struggles so much with grief. Like, what if it's contagious?
Or what if I make her sad? I get that, if I mention her, and I understand, so there's no judgment, but I think saying this right now is good for anybody that's listening, at least for me. Yes, you might text me a picture or tell me that, something's going on, like with the teenagers that, Kira's friends that are still alive. And I'm friends with all their moms, but I have to tell them over and over. Yes, I might get sad, and that might be when I start crying, but like, you can't protect me from this pain by keeping my daughter's name out of your mouth. It's just like, I'm not going to remember. And what I do is I tell people what I need, and I tell them, you can't say anything wrong to me. I try to help them, but it's hard when, I mean, and I never judge anybody, but yeah, people don't always know what to say. And I know in this world where with mothers with children on the other side, they do feel like maybe people think it's contagious or it's too hard to look at. And I really was like, I swear to you, Catherine, I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing we're going to pretend that Kira didn't exist to make society feel better. Like, it's not, because she exists more now than ever. So, or that I'm not going to not bring her up or talk about her. I mean, I talk about her the same way I talked about her when she was here,
Yeah.
and I think that, yeah, changing the culture around that. And then the just being there, like somebody in grief, my closest, the people that did the best job for me at this being able to be there were the people that just sat with me, or I'm here for you. I don't need to take you for a walk to stop you from crying. That reaction when people would be like, oh no, like, what can I do? And it's like, let me cry,
Yeah.
let me fall to the ground and tell me, like, I get it. I understand. Like, I stand with you. I'm here. Of course you feel this way, because there's, in grief, there is no fixing it. And we just want to feel good. And so in this culture. And I do want to feel good too, but I think we feel good by actually feeling and being willing to feel together.
Well, and we shouldn't underestimate our capacity to experience hard emotions, and to withstand pain, our own or other people's. I just, I have a really deep willingness to be in the darkest places. That was actually a characteristic of mine, even as a little kid. And that's probably why I found myself in a lot of dark places, even as a little kid, just to get some training. So it was actually an intuitive that I work with, Lorna Collins, in the UK. When she first met me, she said, "Boy, you have such an interesting light. I've never seen that before." And we sort of figured it out. She said, "Your light is designed to shine in the darkest places." And I sort of have this like leopard light where I kind of can go in and out. And so it's very, that's why people who generally find their way to me are people who have are finding themselves at some kind of a crossroads transition. Kind of, I call it all the little deaths that we experience in life. Um, it just tends to be where I will suddenly show up. And I think that's why, because I have this really great capacity for being uncomfortable and not really knowing what to do. And just sort of, if you fall to the ground, like I'm happy to sink to the ground with you and just sit there. And so I guess I would encourage people that like you can do it. You know, we have where our hearts are, they're meant to get big and stretchy, and they can do that. We have that capacity.
And that it will move through. And the whole time you're talking, I know that people are listening and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's me." The dark, being in that dark place and look, or that needs somebody like you, which I know I did. And I'm thinking while you're talking, I can see when I look back at the people that came into my life, it's like you came in, 30, 12, 11 years before Kira transitions. And it's all for purpose for us to do the work we're doing at the time and to help each other along the way. As you and I, like you said, we don't get to the mountaintop. We're totally different women that were then. We were whole human beings, amazing then. We had maybe a few more things to work on, which we have, at least I know I did, anxiety and a lot of fear and anger not anger, but like frustration with the world and the way that it was. And so,
Well, I had anger. It's okay to
yeah, I probably did too. Yeah, I did too.
let's talk about rage and highlight and hydrate.
Yeah, let's talk about rage and hydrate. Yeah. And so I think that where you think, okay, to have someone to be able to be there for you, with you in those darkest places. And then there's more light comes in, because that has been my 100% experience, is that every time I have had, like, I think there was a lot of stuff pre, my big spiritual awakening, which was in 2013. There were things that happened, divorce and, just a lot of things. But really after that, I would have these really emotional bottoms that seemed out of nowhere that I didn't know. And then I would always I remember in 2018, I couldn't sleep. I had the worst anxiety. It was really bad. And bad. And I remember I knew that I was going to be able to help other people, and I could see afterwards why it happened, because then I could see myself being placed in other positions to help. And it's the same thing that's happening now with Kira's transition, because I had seen, through my own difficulties being used to help other people, which is like kind of what we do as human beings. It's definitely the way I live my life. And so now it was like, I don't want to. I don't want to use my daughters this. I don't People would say to me, you're going to help so many people that have been through this, right? And so I would say, having a child, and I knew, Catherine, I was like, oh, this is so much bigger than helping people with grief.
Yeah.
It's helping us transcend. I mean, really, what has happened to me and the wild amount of things that have, we haven't talked much about that. I don't think I need a consistent, I think even listening to these words is a frequency, it's an energy that can be felt. It's opening up to the possibility that there is more, way more than just being connected to the other side, that we're all moving into this higher level of consciousness. I experience it. I'm fully anchored in it. I experience a peace that I never could have imagined possible. And it makes no sense that that peace has come to me through my daughter being in a fatal accident. I mean, that doesn't make sense, but it does. It does, because this was the plan that I made, and for the work that I'm being asked to do, which is hard, but also easy at the same time, because it's just coming right through. I'm just being shown what to do next. And so with you, Catherine, I want to say too, like with this podcast, you're the fourth person on the podcast. And I have a long list of people, and I just I hear, okay, it's Catherine. And then I come to find out yesterday was the anniversary so we scheduled this. We scheduled this without me knowing anything. And Toby's anniversary of transition is tomorrow. And yesterday is Alpana's. Am I saying her name right?
Alpana.
Alpana. So we're here meeting in the middle of those two very profound, powerful days. And that is not a coincidence. This kind of stuff is just, it makes absolute sense, because we are being helped by the other side, by God, by the, God, a lot of people, it's like, it's all God. Well, yeah, Kira tells me she teams up with God, right? But I needed it to be Kira. I really did, to be able to, and that's on a human level,
Yeah, the human stuff is complicated. I mean, my friend Cindy, when her husband crossed over and he was just, her absolute beloved, and somebody said to her something like, he's still with you. And she said, and I thought this was a really honest human thing to say. She said, I don't want a spiritual relationship with my husband. I want a corporeal relationship with my husband. That's fair. I mean, that's a fair, feel good always means sometimes you're going to feel like, well, I wish the person is sitting right here. Or I had a lady call me one time, and she was inquiring about Druid Rising work, but she wasn't ready for that work. Her beloved husband had died very suddenly just a few months before, and she was still in complete shock. And she was getting messages like you wouldn't believe. And she would tell me these 25 things. And then she would say, but he's not coming through. And then she'd tell me 25 more things, right? And then he was verifying it with the same thing would happen at the exact same time to other people, and they would tell her about it. And she said, but he's not coming through. And I said, it really seems to me like he's working double extra overtime to come through as clearly as possible. The issue is that he's not walking through the door, which is what you want right now. And that's okay, right? And it's okay if we're not sitting there going, I have found the meaning of, my experiences. Feel good always means we get to move through them at our pace, hopefully accepting help. For some of us, we're slower than others I was a slow mover of trusting people who could help me. And we're allowed to, I said I had rage, I was allowed to experience that. Now the things that made me have rage, they have no fire for me anymore. That's all cleared and gone. But I think it's okay that I experienced the rage. So yeah, I just, it goes back to, we have the capacity to experience the full range. And in fact, I now like being in the 3D. That wouldn't have always been the case when I was trying to, astrally project to get out of my body, but which is still handy at the dentist and such, but now I like being here and doing human stuff. Even my work, I like that.
I feel like that's the feel good always. Okay. Because like, or the feeling, because I also pretty much like everything that I do. It actually doesn't matter because I'm taking myself there. And I said that after Kira transitioned, it didn't matter where I went, I was taking myself there and I was miserable, right? But when I am in this like more state of peace, it doesn't really matter what I'm doing. I really enjoy doing everything, but I also have kind of been able to build a life that I've worked really hard at listening and building a life. It has not always been like this. That is peaceful, that the people around me, the relationships, the work I do, that it aligns with that piece, which wasn't always the case, but I knew I could always start now. And I learned, and I tripped and fell, and so with Kira's transition, it was like, okay, it really has catapulted me into this level of, we talk about three-dimensional, right? I do think that I live mostly, in a higher state of consciousness because so much stuff is constantly happening, but I am here in a body on earth. Higher, lower, it doesn't matter. I just experience the world in a different way than I experienced it before in terms of the wild amount of connection that happens all the time.
Which does make the challenges that come in smoother to handle. Well, you and I were texting earlier about, like, I said something about how my guides keep me humble. And so I thought this was really funny. It happened recently. So I was in this guided meditation with my Kabbalah teacher, and, okay, so now ask your guides something about your purpose, right? And so my guide said, well, it's like you can go into a big, huge library and pick the most complicated book off the shelf and open it up and explain very complex or esoteric concepts in a very accessible way. And I thought, well, okay, that feels true. And I said, well, then why do all of these annoying things keep happening at work where, like, it's just not working out my way and everything is so annoying and hard? And my guide said, well, you create those situations so that you don't become a know-it-all.
Interesting.
Like, okay, that tracks. And I haven't had an annoying experience of that nature since then, So I think I feel like I like even the stuff that comes in that pops me out of, we'll just say, the spiritual mindset, because it's just a reminder, like, get back, get back to the start. And I think it might be helpful here, Becky, to talk a little bit about what's been coming in my little rosary club.
Yeah, absolutely. I just was listening about your rosary cup. But go ahead. Tell us what you're doing.
3 or 4 years ago, I thought, well, it's coming up on All Souls Day, November 1st. Like, why don't I do a little prayers for the beloved departed? And people could send in the names of their people, and we can do like a week of prayers, daily prayers for them. And I thought, well, I need a format for that. And I was rereading this really beautiful book about the rosary called The Way of the Rose by Clark Strand and Perdita Finn. And I was rereading that, and I thought, oh, well, and I have my grandfather's rosary beads, which, as a digression, my father is highly intuitive. And back when I was in a very dark time, when I was about 21, his father came through in a dream and said, give Catherine my rosary beads. Now, because I'm a knucklehead, I didn't start to pray on them until about 20 years later. I probably could have done that then. So sorry, Granddad. Anyway, so I give Granddad's rosary beads and I say, okay, everybody, like, you've given me the names. Here are the names. I'll show you. So here are all the names. Here is the name of the
I
moon.
love it. I've heard you, we can replay it on Instagram too. At Druid Rising, you can play it and you read all the names. And I, of course, tune in Becky because my name's on there, and Kira, because you're still praying for me and I need it. We all do.
Yeah. So, people come on Instagram Live and I start praying, but then all of these dead people start coming in. Now, why I was surprised, I don't know, because I had set the time, 4 o'clock Eastern time on Instagram Live. We're going to be praying together. And so, of course, all the people that we were praying for showed up. And they started coming through. I sort of quickly figured out how to do the format. So we break it up, we do a little prayer, and then I kind of say the stuff that I'm getting. And it's really funny because even when somebody pops into Instagram Live for a minute, like their people on the other side won't hesitate to swoop in.
And you hear them like a medium would at a medium reading. They come in. I mean, you are a medium. You are a medium, but I think anytime we're able to connect to the other side, you're a medium between the other side. It doesn't have to look like a medium reading, but you are essentially in these calls, you are bringing forth people. You're like, I have somebody here that,
I talk about myself as being psychic intuitive. Rather than just being not just, but rather than strictly a medium, primarily because one, I think when people call up a medium, it's because they have a specific purpose of connecting with their people on the other side. Like, I want to talk to great Aunt Sally, and so can you bring her through? And then the medium says, I have this person, and gives you all this evidence that it's great Aunt Sally. Generally, people are talking to me for other reasons. Great Aunt Sally might come through, but so might an angel or an ascended master or other teams in spirit. So anyway, sometimes people,
can I say something about that?
yes.
So what I love about that and what I do is I surrender. I am surrendered completely. Every day, my prayer is show me what you need to show me today. God, show me because I'm here. So, with a medium, if I'm like in the evidence, I know people need evidence, and I've been provided with so much evidence, and I've watched other people, some people just need evidence this is even real. And going to a medium, maybe that moves you to this openness that this is real. If that your loved one is still here very much. But what you're talking about, and this is what I do too, is I'm not going to think that I know what I need to be shown. So
So I just go,
exactly. So you're just like open to like, you show me what you need to show me today. I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to Google it. Just show me. And it could be Kira, it could be Toby. I have things happening all the time. And so that's what you're doing is you're just bringing forth which is, it lines up with kind of how spirit works. It's going to show you spirit will show you what we're ready for.
and what happened with Rosary Club, which one of our members, Amani, kind of she dubbed it Rosary Club, and I'm very clear that it's those of us here in body, but also those in spirit. We're all part of the club. So we pray for a week, right? And I think that this is going to be this nice week of prayers. And at the end of the week, Mother Mary, who's an ascended master, she belongs to all of us. And so I always say, you don't have to be Catholic, you don't have to be Christian to pray the Rosary. Read that book. And
what's the book again? Say it one more time.
It's called The Way of the Rose by Clark Strand and Perdita Finn.
And I can link that. I'll link to
Yeah,
that.
it's lovely. So at the end of the week, Mother Mary said, please continue. And I had one of those moments where it was like when spirit says to do something and you just sort of have this, oh shit, like we are being carried into something. So the way it sort of has transformed is that we got a lot of like really individual stuff where it would be like, okay, great Aunt Sally's here to talk to so and so, and then great Aunt Sally would start helping other people in the group. Now the information that we're getting is a little more universal, I'll say. But when I was thinking about Feel Good Always, and I do have to go back to all of these Rosary Club recordings and sort of pull out the themes and they've been very clear that the themes have been building on themselves and that it's leading up, as you would expect. But when I was thinking about Feel Good Always, I jotted down 3 of the spirits who came through who said things that I think are really relevant to the Feel Good Always kind of idea. So one was this lady called Geneva who she was about 100 years old, almost 100 years old when she died. She's a Black woman of the American South. By all accounts, a very prayerful, very faith-oriented woman. And all this information was coming in. And then Geneva steps forward very quietly and says, "When are you going to start living as if you love your life?" And this is a person who would have experienced a great deal of hardship personally, but also experienced the 20th century in America, on the planet Earth. She saw a lot. When are you going to start living like you love your life? And I think that's maybe another way of saying feel good always, which is have respect for your life, for yourself, and for your experience, and therefore for the life and experience. I am really humbled by what people um, have to experience and what they carry and the deep connections and love and lessons and the things that bring people to their knees. I'm really humbled by it always. And so Geneva brought that to us. Then there was this guy called Peter who he transitioned at about age 40 or something of a heart attack. And he said, "I wish I had taken better care of my body." And he said, "I wish I hadn't taken shortcuts with my feelings. So rather than like smoking the cigarettes, drinking the wine, eating the sleeve of Oreos, all the things that we do, if I had just sort of let myself, I can feel Peter now." So he's saying that, like, the heart thing was like because he let his heart, like, he didn't let it expand. Oh, Peter, eternal blessings be upon you. So he's like, "I'm just happy to be here." Thanks, buddy.
We're happy you're here, Peter, spreading your message of living and that we treat our bodies. I know it's hard because I know I can eat. I used to drink wine to numb out the way that I didn't know I was doing it until after I stopped and all these feelings came up.
I didn't know I lived in a body for like 35 years. I mean, I tried to not live in a body. I lived in my head. I didn't take care of my body, but I just didn't even know. I don't have disordered eating. I've never had disordered eating, but like I didn't know what hunger felt like. Or even now, my partner will say to me, if he says, "How are you feeling?" If I say I'm tired, he asks, "Are you physically tired, like you need to go to sleep? Or is that code for an emotion that you don't know how to name?"
I love that he knows.
He's good.
Like, wow, he needs to spread that.
Honestly, and the guides had come through to me at some stage. I forget what I was whinging to them about. And they said, "You only have two jobs: to take care of your body and to experience joy." So give and receive joy. So, like, does this fit into one of those two things? And I'm like, no. And so then, that goes back, like, so take care of your body so that you can feel good always.
Absolutely. That's what I was just gonna say, is that I've exercised kind of my whole, even the stopping of the wine, all everything that I do is because I actually enjoy feeling good, and, it's not for me, it has not been, the way that I look. I mean, I don't exercise to lose weight. I want to feel good. If I have extra weight on my body, I don't wanna lose it to not look a certain way. I wanna feel good, and I wanna be able to after cure transition, I can't tell you how many miles and I walked, and thankfully my body was in a position to be able to move because I needed to move.
Yeah, it's important to move, to have that energy kind of keep moving. And I think, what Peter's trying to, he's like, yeah, yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell you, that like, he let his heart kind of stay one size, rather than letting it sort of stretch. And then this one, I just am thinking now, this particular person came through in a one-on-one session, but not Rosary Club, but her name was Chelsea. And she had a great recommendation. She had died fairly young, and her mother was raising her little boy. And she said, "Okay, here's what I want you to do. Remember how we used to have dance parties in the living room? I want you guys to do that again." And she said, "Make a playlist with all of your favorite songs, Mom, all of his favorite songs, and all of mine." And she said, "I'll start. and she started singing that seminal 80s classic by Belinda Carlisle. Ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth? We'll make heaven a place on earth. They say in heaven, love comes first. We'll make heaven a place on earth. Now, we had that 45. Google it, kids. But we had that 45 or that cassette tape, and we were thinking that that was a love song between two people. But when you listen to that song from the perspective of a mother on the other side to her 10-year-old son and to her mother, totally different message. And when you think about what she's saying is like, heaven is a place on earth. We make that together. Like this connection is heaven on earth. So that's feel good always. And I do think I appreciate that feel good always has sort of double meaning, because although it doesn't mean you're going to feel happy every single minute of every single day, it does say to feel not only good, meaning comprehensively, but good to feel well. So, I've read, first calm the disturbance. So, like, it is important you're going through acute grief, take a walk, keep it moving. Um, because I think that there is a degree of mastery over our emotions and over our thoughts and even, sort of our nervous systems that makes it a little easier to be an observer of the challenging things and come at it from sort of that higher perspective. I often think about, with Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk and peace activist, said something like, when people ask me, aren't you worried about the state of the world? He said, if I worry and I have anxiety, I'll get sick. And if I get sick, I can't help. And so I do think that there's a little bit of, it doesn't mean feel happy all the time.
We could wish that, but that's not what it means. It means feel.
It means feel comprehensively, feel.
Yeah, feel that you will survive your feelings and you can expand, which I get. I didn't want to feel what I ended up having to feel, but it will expand your level, expand your ability for joy and heaven on earth. That song, Kira has sent it to me as a sign. And I think she's trying to get me to dance in the living room, because you're the third person that's talked about dancing in the living room. And that's how I get, when you hear something more than once, twice, I'm usually like, okay, now it's the third time in like 2 days, dancing. Everyone's talking about dancing because, yeah, even dancing, it's like such a connection and a release and a feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that, our home base, our spiritual home base ends up being, I read a really great book recently, The Book of Joy. And I forget who the journalist is who wrote it, but it's an interview that he conducted over several days with the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who were very good friends. And the two of them, look like they personally and globally had experienced major challenges, right? And here they are with great joy, being together and laughing all the time and talking about what is the meaning of joy and sort of feel good always. Come back to your spiritual home base. I feel like I've poked around, and a great many religious traditions will basically say, like, just think about God instead. There's sort of like a compass that if we let ourselves get back there. So you know what? The wave of grief hits you, sink to the floor, let it go through you, or, go for your 10-mile hike, let it go through you, and then see what happens on the other side. There is sort of that like home base of feeling good.
Yeah, that it will come and go, that it's impermanent. I mean, that's kind of how, and to be there when I talked earlier about people like maybe feeling that they will trigger me. Yeah, like maybe I will get triggered. Okay, I don't even like the word. But when Becky when I feel sad I feel it. I feel it fully. I'm there for it. And then it moves. It's the thinking I'm going to feel like this forever and tomorrow's going to be worse and the next day is going to be worse. And the spinning that I could observe and be like, come back into my body. Where are my feet planted? And I'm not doing that. And so that really has helped. We're almost out of time, but I know you've already really talked. The last thing I want to ask you, you've talked a lot about Feel Good Always already, of course, and Druid Rising. I think, everybody should check out your Instagram. You have the live on Mondays. It's 4 p.m. Eastern time, so 1 Pacific, which is where I am locally. And then it also replays, which is wonderful that you're offering that, and then you do private sessions also, and you also donated to the Live Like Kira. We had a big event, the Kira Bradley Foundation, which was so funny because people went into the silent auction and it was all healers. I was like, "Oh, yeah, Kira brought a bunch of healers to people," which is just it's just amazing because this is what we need, to move into this. So the question I have, you said a lot about Feel Good Always, and you could say more if you want, but really, if there's anything that you could say to people, like just a couple things. One thing you've already kind of mentioned a couple times, which is also something that I do, which is read. I read the Book of Joy. I would read, read books, spiritual books, calming books that would help remind me of what is possible. And so that's one thing. But if you have any other, I mean, you've given so many great tips already. If you have anything else that you'd like to share before we end.
Do you want a little guided meditation that the guides gave me that feels so great? And I just tell everybody I meet about it because it's so cute. So I call it the Champagne Tower of Light because that's how it kind of came in. So basically, and you can do this if you just need a little boost of energy or you just need to feel clear, whatever it is, or if you're going through like some big treatment, anything. So you call in light from the highest, purest source to come in through your crown, comes in, fills every cell of your body as it pours down, and we invite the cells of our body to turn up like a little chalice or like a little champagne glass, and it just starts pouring down like your whole body, every cell in your body is a champagne tower of light, releasing anything that doesn't serve, filling you with the highest, purest source light in the perfect amount, in the perfect way, so you can feel good all. And it's so great. I mean, the color might change depending on what you're going through. We did this with my dad when he was in the hospital with very serious stuff last year. We did it all the time. If you're feeling chaotic, frustrated, tired, it's a great little boost.
And it's so simple. It's so simple. It's just that visualization. And now I mean, I could feel it as soon as you started saying it.
Great, doesn't it?
It does. And I was always shocked at first when I would actually start to feel the light, the energy of the light coming in and these things. So thank you so much for your time today. I'm so glad that Kira made sure that you were here. They're all working together. They're all working together. And I hope if you're listening today that you heard what you needed to hear. And I'll put everything in the show notes so that if anybody wants to follow you, and I'm sure they will, and get in touch with you, all the ways to do that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, bye, you guys.
Thanks to Catherine for being here today, and in the next episode, I'm going to be doing a solo talk about how grief and suffering can become a doorway to deeper connection and expansion. Please scroll down in your app, hit follow, leave a quick review, and share this episode with someone who might need these reminders of connection. And keep listening because there's so much more. Until then, may you notice the signs, trust the guidance, and remember to feel good always.